There's an old adage that great movies teach you how to watch them, and I've found that to be true. Films have ways of drawing our eyes and ears to certain things, even without us noticing, that end up being the keys to understanding them, whether in terms of story or theme. If you're someone that likes to unpack movies for deeper meaning, or to peek under the hood to figure out how they made you feel the way they did, it pays to look out for how we're being primed to pay attention. In One Battle After Another, Paul Thomas Anderson does it with names. The French 75, Perfidia Beverly Hills, Stephen J. Lockjaw, Jungle Pussy. They can't help but stand out. And, naturally, we might spend the first few minutes of this movie wondering what those names mean. That is a question in itself worth asking, to a certain extent. Perfidia is a Spanish word for treachery. Lockjaw, aside from being appropriate for the most tightly wound man on earth, is a medical condition that's a telltale sign of tetanus, an alarming symptom of a greater infection. Bob is a fun way of underscoring how out of place Leonardo DiCaprio's protagonist has become. In this high-stakes world of revolutionaries and secret societies, he's ultimately just a guy. But there's also more to it than that. These names are just a gateway to One Battle After Another's clever deployment of language, which sits at the heart of what the movie's really about. I believe it's the glue that allows it to hold so many things together at once, from its politics to its character dynamics to its multi-genre story structure, without any of them feeling diluted or unbalanced. One Battle After Another's dialogue requires a different kind of listening. Sean Penn as Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw in One Battle After Another. Names in One Battle After Another tend to serve a purpose. They communicate something, to both other characters and the audience, beyond their definitions. This function is built directly into the underground revolutionary nature of the French 75, whose members use aliases to not only disguise their identities, but send a message. Their names are chosen, and that choice says a lot about how they want to be perceived. Their organization's name, for instance, refers neither to their nationality nor, seemingly, to their size. But it sounds cool, doesn't it? It conjures an image of revolution, the French one, while also sharing its name with a cocktail, which itself is supposedly named after World War I artillery. It feels like a name sturdy enough to carry the legend these rebels hoped to leave behind, and was surely chosen for that reason. With this, PTA plants a seed, and it sprouts fast. Suddenly, this distinction between what words mean and what purpose they serve is everywhere. Lockjaw is a kind of bridge here. His name isn't chosen, but his rank is given, and he accordingly bases his identity on external validation. His sense of masculinity is formed by such signifiers. So, when he corners Perfidia in a bathroom stall and says he only wants his hat and gun, two symbols of his military-created manhood, we understand he's not just being literal. Perfidia lecturing Pat, not yet Bob, on gender roles is another early example. She is chafing under the restricting responsibility of motherhood, but rather than say that, she hides her feelings behind her revolutionary rhetoric. Pat, to his credit, sees right through her and calls her on it. Even before her betrayal, we have no doubt that Perfidia leaving Pat and their daughter has nothing to do with an ideological commitment to the cause. Both of these scenes flash One Battle After Another's secret talent, which should be the envy of screenwriters everywhere. Over the movie's prologue, we are trained to approach dialogue subtextually, to almost ignore what is said, in favor how it was said and why. Speech is an action to be interpreted, it's show don't tell storytelling, if telling was also a kind of showing. Once we're primed to pay close attention to language and how it's deployed, it becomes the fulcrum for all the film's key interests. Comrade Josh, bad hombre and making it clean, what it means to speak in code. Leonardo DiCaprio as Bob Ferguson in One Battle After Another. One Battle After Another is rife with code speak. As a form, it's not meant to be understood literally, but to serve a function. For revolutionaries at constant risk of discovery, it's a useful tool for identity verification, but through Bob's interactions with his former cohorts, the practice frequently veers into absurdity. Deandra calling Bob to warn him of Lockjaw's attack is his first instance of forgetting an identifying key phrase, and also the first time that the person asking refuses to let it slide. This is, as it turns out, merely PTA setting the table, but it's notable that Deandra does this despite clearly knowing who she's speaking with. This is our first indication that the French 75, or whatever this revolutionary network is now called, has let its practices become ritualistic. Then, Bob encounters Comrade Josh, the snide voice on the other end of the underground crisis hotline that becomes the bane of his existence. Though he gets through multiple layers of the code, effectively proving himself a member, Bob cannot remember the answer to "What time is it?" Unlike Deandra, Josh doesn't already know Bob, and the distressed dad's pleas get him nowhere. Instead, Josh mocks him for not having studied the revolutionary texts with the proper dedication, and refuses to give him the rendezvous point. Bob's misbegotten phone calls are funny for the same reason that they're a pointed, linguistic critique. The subtext of these coded exchanges isn't what it's supposed to be. If Deandra's password request was ritualistic, Josh's is more like virtue signaling, and knowing the answer to the question has become more important than ascertaining who Bob really is. As a result, a genuine life-threatening situation is tied up in the French 75's now bloated bureaucracy. Bob is only able to resolve it by exploiting that bureaucracy's rules until he gets someone who actually knows him on the phone, and the final question he's asked not only makes fun of the now moot procedure, but actually does what the code is meant to do in the first place. The goal of this is not merely to mock leftist fragmentation, but to strip political complications away from a much simpler truth: coded language loses its effectiveness when divorced from its intended purpose. In a critical point of contrast, Bob experiences the code speak of Sensei Sergio's younger, much more nimble resistance network. With a quick name drop and the phrase, bad hombre, which Sergio had used to describe him just once the day before, he's clued into a scheme to smuggle him out of police custody before he's identified by the authorities. It's a thrilling scene that goes off without a hitch. Sensei and his team use language to enact revolution. Comrade Josh and his fellow French 75ers use language to feel like revolutionaries. The Christmas adventurers fill out the other end of that spectrum. Like the French 75, the name chosen by this secret society of white supremacists tells us how they want to be perceived, but they are notably not outward-facing. If it serves any external function, it's to be benign enough not to arouse suspicion if discussed in public. The effect of their name is intended purely for their own membership.